Jesus, without a doubt, was the Prince of Peace. We understand that. He's the one we follow. But whether we find ourselves celebrating in the religious mode or we find ourselves celebrating in the secular mode, all of the arms that we can use to emphasize peace among nations.
Merry Christmas.
You folks will have to pardon me, please.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Oh, boy.
I recognize you. You're Santa.
Santa Claus, yes.
But do you just come in every church like this in the middle of a worship service?
Well, no, not every church.
Do you
I've been
interrupt?
to this church a time or two.
Are you
but
used to interrupting what otherwise would be a perfectly good sermon?
Well, let's let them be the judge of that. No, it sounded like a great sermon, I thought. But, you know, I kind of debated whether I should come in here this morning. I sort of felt a little uncomfortable, even though I have been here 4 other Sundays.
Yes.
4 years.
This is your 4th Christmas in a row.
It is.
To barge in and interrupt a sermon like you've done now.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but, you know, just got to thinking, Santa's welcome at shopping malls. Santa's welcome in people's homes, at office parties.
That's true.
Street corners, Santa's welcome.
This is true.
Somehow I feel a little uncomfortable sometimes coming to church. I thought everybody was
That's an
supposed to.
interesting thought. Is there any place other than church where you feel uncomfortable?
Well, yes, there are occasions where I feel uncomfortable at other places, but mostly...
Primarily church.
Yeah, because it's like we want to separate Santa Claus from the religious meaning of Christmas.
Well, there are some places, I was just telling the folks, and you may have heard, I presume you were listening on your radio or on the speaker system?
I was listening.
You may have heard that I was just saying to the folks before I was interrupted that...
You were interrupted.
Yes. that peace is so important, that it's essential, that we utilize every arm, every means we have available to us to get that message across to everyone who will listen to it. And now you're telling me that you're a peaceful sort of person.
Oh, definitely.
Come think of it, I have no memory of knowing of you ever being involved in anything that was not in the best interest of people generally. You like to give things.
That's right.
You like to help people.
That's what I do. That's who I am.
I've never known you to be hostile. Do you ever get hostile?
Oh, no. No, well, you know, there's times when, like everyone else, somebody steps on my toes and I'm a little hurt, and of course your natural reaction is you want to retaliate. But I've learned that that's not the best way sometimes. Normally, everybody has a point of view, and if you stand back and listen to what their purpose or their reason was, you might at least understand it a little bit better.
Oh, so you're suggesting that maybe this peace thing is easier to talk about than it is to practice. That maybe we need to work a bit more at practicing the art of peace.
Yes, I definitely feel that's right.
Well, Santa, I don't know whether you realize this or not, but when I have a sermon on Sunday morning, I've always done a bit of preparation, and I usually have several points that I want to get across. And
am I not covering these points well for you this morning?
Well, so far you haven't missed any lines, but you've added 2 or 3.
Good. Okay. You know, Santa's memory fails sometimes.
Well, all I really wanted to do was get us reorganized here just a little bit.
Okay.
But you've really made some great points. And one of the things that I'd like to emphasize as a part of the sermon, I'm going to get my sermon in regardless of
where I want to take it.
Yes, is that we really have reason to work for peace on the international level. And we have reason to work on peace just among us folks, in churches, in families, in communities, within a nation, for example. And we have reason to work on the inner peace that we feel, that inner kind of serenity. So let's go back. I remember 4 years ago we talked about international peace.
Oh, yes.
And I remember in those conversations, and you may be surprised to know that I kept notes about those conversations. In that first conversation, we were then talking about the possibility of the United States and Russia considering reducing the number of ballistic missiles. You remember that?
I remember that conversation.
And there were a lot of people then who were poo-pooing, so to speak, that whole idea. But at that particular Christmas, that was a part of the conversation.
I remember.
Then I remember the year after that, which would have been 2 years ago, we talked about it again. And sure enough, there were already plans and some procedures underway by which that could be accomplished. And we were beginning to have some conversations on the possibility of reducing Stroop troop strength at certain places in the world.
I remember that. You know, it's amazing. This year I've been delivering as gifts little pieces of the Berlin Wall
Oh,
all
you're
over the
kidding.
world.
No, you're kidding.
No, I promise.
Really?
That's yes.
You mean you've been there?
Oh, sure. Well, Santa's everywhere. On all
How many continents do you cover at?
Well, there used to be
Short Creek?
5, but I think now it's up to
Oh,
7.
7, 12, or 13, maybe.
Yeah, continents.
However many continents there are, you cover them all.
That's right. And you know, I lose track. It changes from year to year, and but I hit them all. Yeah.
Well, I'm rather interested. You've got some pieces of the Berlin Wall.
Oh yes.
The Berlin Wall has been very symbolic of the Cold War between the United States and Russia. You think maybe there's some good cues there?
Well, I definitely think that we're taking steps forward, particularly on the international level, as far as countries getting along and learning about freedom and peace. And
I read the other day that one of the Russian generals visited NATO headquarters, and then I noticed the paper was saying that some Russian students were out at Offutt Air Force Base taking a tour of the facility.
I think that's great.
That's a big step from where we used to be.
It definitely is.
What about Romania? I understand that they're searching for the same kind of freedom that the East Germans were, and Czechoslovaks, and the Poles, and so forth, but they're going at it a little different way. How do you interpret that?
Well, there's still turmoil out there. There's no doubt about it. And
Peace doesn't come easy.
It doesn't come easy. There are still battles that are being fought, but it just seems like step by step
People
we're
have
gradually.
differences of opinion.
They do.
Yeah, they go about things in different ways.
I've noticed that.
What do you think people need to do to really get so they can get along in peace, even if they have differences of opinion?
I think it'd be real important for
Have
them.
you noticed that I've been interrupting you?
I have noticed that. And I thought, you know, number one, I might be saying the wrong things. Number two, I'm heading the wrong direction. But why are you interrupting me?
Well, I think sometimes we need to agitate each other a little bit, see if we mean what we're talking about.
Well, that's,
That is to
okay.
say that there are some things we need to do to have peace, and one of the things you and I need to do is be patient with each other
Yes.
and listen.
How am I doing?
Well, you're doing great, though. I really wasn't listening.
Okay.
Did you get that point?
Yeah.
It's so easy for us not to listen,
That's true.
not to try to feel where the other person is.
That is true, and that is so important. I think peace, if it's going to come even with countries, it first has to start inside of people.
And we do have to listen a lot, don't we?
And we have to listen and try to understand what the other person's feeling.
You know, we're standing here this morning talking about peace, and I guess there's still gun shooting down in Panama.
That's true. And like I said, there's been turmoil for years and years, and there still is.
Are you a religious person?
Oh, definitely.
How do you figure?
Well, what do you mean? How do I figure? I believe in Jesus. I believe in a lot of good things.
You ever heard the Christmas story before you heard it here this morning?
Oh, definitely. Well, when I was a boy, I went to Sunday school.
You went to Sunday school?
Yes, is it? Yes.
He went to Sunday school. That's great. I'm glad to know that.
Oh, yes.
Well, you know, there are people in our religious tradition who have the feeling that the world's going to get worse and worse, and that we're living in the last days, and everything's going to get just so terrible that
Yes.
you don't think we're just setting ourselves up for a big letdown with all this conversation about the tearing down of the symbol of tyranny, the Berlin Wall, and what's happening in Eastern Europe, and the fact that we recognize we may have to go through a bit of pain before there can be real peace in Panama.
Well,
Doesn't
you know,
it
there's
seem
always...
kind of futile if everything's going to...
I don't happen to believe that way, personally. And there's always the doomsdayers out there that feel like it's all going to come to an end. But, you know, it just seems to me that over the years, people have progressively been making gradual steps to understand one another. I feel like even though there still is racial tension, that's somehow easing a little bit, step by step. People are coming closer together. The world is becoming a smaller place.
When you went to Sunday school, did you ever hear anything about the need to work towards that end?
Yes.
You know, I find it very interesting. Incidentally, Santa, I'm very much in agreement with what you've just said. But I find it interesting that we teach so seriously the message that Jesus taught about getting along, about listening, about treating others the way we want to be treated, about making peace a reality in our world. And then sometimes after we've taught people we need to work hard to do this, we say it can't ever happen. And what
That
you're
is a funny
saying and
thing.
what I'm trying to support is it can happen. And it is happening. And this should be one of the best Christmases we've celebrated in a long time because we're seeing more of it happen on the international level.
That's exactly right. And you know, in my world travels, I see turmoil in families. Even.
Oh, do you really?
Amongst people. People
guess,
that gave gifts last year aren't giving them this year, and they're not
No,
even talking to
no,
people
you're-
sometimes.
Are you serious?
Oh, yes, it
You mean
happens
in a
even.
year's time, people get angry at one another and don't like each other and won't give them gifts anymore?
That happens, and that's the kind of thing that each of us need to work on.
Won't send cards?
Don't send cards, don't want to have anything to do with the people.
Aren't listening and don't want to listen?
That's exactly right.
Aren't patient, don't want to be patient?
And aren't talking.
And aren't talking. I guess we can
There
never
you-
have peace if we aren't willing to work at listening, patience,
That's exactly right.
understanding. That's a good lesson for us to learn.
And it's something we all can work on. Brothers and sisters, moms and dads.
What about these people? Do you have any suggestions, when people do find themselves separated from one another, families, relatives, friends, or whoever it may be? Does it have to be that way forever?
No, not at all. This is a great season, in fact, to bury the hatchet, as it were. Can I use those terms
Sure,
here?
that's fine.
Bury the hatchet, and to accept forgiveness and to forgive others. This is a perfect season. And a good way to do it is the way Santa does, by giving gifts. That's, even though they're material, they symbolize a spirit of giving and peace.
Well, now you're trying to tell me there's some spiritual value in material gifts.
Bingo! Yes! There we are.
Well, I think you're sounding very good. I like what you say, but I have an axe to grind with you.
Oh,
It's been my observation across the year that there have been a lot of toys that are given to children that we usually think of as nurturing the imagination in the area of violence and war. Sometimes people say, as a joke, but it's not really so funny, that Christmas is a time when we celebrate the birthday for the Prince of Peace, and we give our children artillery and airplanes and
I thought
grenades
this,
and bombs and all those kinds of things to play with.
I see where you're going with this. I thought this was a subject that might come up today, and it's kind of funny. Old Santa really doesn't make all those toys.
You mean you don't make war toys?
I don't make war toys. I don't particularly...
How about drug songs? Do you make up any drug songs?
Oh, no.
Have you listened to some of the stuff that's on the tapes that some of our kids are listening to today?
Sure. Yeah, it's...
Sex and drugs and violence. You don't fool with those things. do
Oh,
you?
no. Santa likes to give wholesome gifts that kids can use and deal with in a constructive way.
But you've avoided my question, and the question is, it seems to me that you have a history of delivering some of these kind of toys, and now you're trying to deny it.
Well, no, as you know, Santa doesn't actually deliver those toys. A lot of times that these toys are slipped in with other gifts that Santa may bring, possibly old parents and friends.
Would parents give those kind of toys?
You
to
know,
children?
as a boy, I received a
Unthinkingly,
BB gun once.
Oh, no.
Yes, it's amazing.
Gee,
Yes, indeed.
wonder. Must have been an uncle or somebody.
I believe it was my father that gave me that gift. Yes.
Well, if my memory serves me correctly, that was a good way to keep the birds out of the chicken house back in
That's
those
right, and it kept my brother real nervous, too. Oh, yeah. But, there are other gifts that a person can give.
days.
Was that in the script?
No, I one of the things that probably would be very helpful for us to say here, and nobody can attest to this more than these boys and girls, is the fact that we really don't need to play with toys of war. We really don't need to play with toys of violence. And probably if we learn not to do that, our parents aren't going to want us to have them, and parents won't be slipping them in on you, and you won't be delivering them, and maybe we can create some more positive images even in the minds of children.
Well, I think
that's an interesting thought. Now, I know everybody would
Food
agree
for
with
thought.
that, but since we're talking about peace, we may as well suggest that it's worth listening to, it's worth thinking about, and it's worth being patient with the sources, right?
Exactly right.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Do you, have you ever been angry at anybody?
Oh, sure. Why, the elves sometimes will make a toy wrong.
Do they?
Mrs. Claus will make the coffee too hot.
Really?
Yes. On occasion, but you have to learn to understand those things. It's an imperfect world we live in, and people are not perfect, and sometimes we step on toes and have our toes stepped on, and we need to learn to be understanding.
Is it possible to feel peace on the inside of ourselves if we're not at peace with other people?
No, it isn't. Because anytime there's a battle going on, that battle is carried on first within yourself and then subjected to other people. The hard thing to learn is to keep that inner peace and to show that.
Well, a very important part of the message of Christmas then has to do with just more than giving gifts. It has to do with what's happening in the world, what's happening among us as families, and what's happening on the inside of us. Do you think there's ever a time when we human beings need to forgive ourselves?
Oh, yes, definitely. I think that's where it all starts. We have to first be understanding and forgiving with ourselves before we can reach out and be that way to others.
Maybe self-forgiveness along with forgiving one another is the beginning of a new life and a new world for some of us in this area of peace.
And accepting forgiveness from someone else.
Yeah, that's very
That's
important.
another
Santa,
step.
I found this to be a very interesting conversation. I have to tell you that I didn't have real peaceful feelings when I saw you jaunting down the aisle.
Well, you know,
I
I guess I should excuse myself for interrupting, but...
Well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you're here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for making me feel welcome.
As a matter of fact, I'd like to give you an invitation for next year already, if you're interested in it.
Oh, hey, I'd love to. You know, you got a nice landing pad up here for the reindeer.
Really?
Yeah, it works out great.
Right on top of the roof.
Right on the roof.
Yeah.
And you know, I got to keep watching this watch because this is Christmas Eve and it's my big
You
day.
have a lot of places to go.
Oh,
Well, we
7
appreciate you
continents, I
coming.
think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You have a nice Christmas. We'll see you.
Merry
soon.
Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas.
So perhaps one of the great messages we can gather from this Christmas season is that even though we have our own particular religious point of view, and that religious point of view reasonably can be very special to us, it's important for us to understand that the great gift of peace, which we think about in the Christmas season, can come to us from many different sources and in many different ways. And even though we may do it in the art form, making believe that we are someone else doing something that's important, the peace that we carry is an important message for the season.